here to talk to you about VR, as Arman mentioned. So, when you hear the term virtual reality, you just think, nice, buzzword. Virtual reality is so hot right now, everyone's talking about it, the kids are doing it, but we don't really know much about VR. So, what is VR?
VR is immersing in a virtual environment. So it's when your reality becomes the virtual world. And what is reality? You have different types of realities. And here we have a diagram called the virtual continuum that shows where everything fits in reality. So on the one side, you have the real world. On the other side, you have the virtual environment. And everything in between is called mixed reality, which is augmented reality and augmented virtuality.
So mixed reality, you'll usually hear about the term MR. It includes everything between the reality, the real world, and the virtual environment, which is complete virtuality. Augmented reality, or AR, is something like Pokemon Go, where you actually augment reality with virtual objects. And then augmented virtuality, which is closer to the virtual environment side, is where you augment virtual environments with real objects. So that would be used for something like when you have a virtual desktop environment, you can actually project real life objects into the virtual world. So for example, that you don't accidentally knock your coffee over on your virtual desktop if it's on your actual desk. Cool, fancy words. So here are some fancy terms when you're talking to people about VR that they usually expect you to know. The one is immersion and the other is presence.
Immersion comes from submersion, to be submerged into a different reality.
And then presence is the how far you are immersed. So presence is on a scale, it's also subjective. So someone will feel complete presence, where someone else might not feel present at all. So the term presence is how immersed someone is, or how much they feel like they are there in the virtual world.
Then to create a VR environment, you have different types of interactions you need to keep in mind. So you have selection, which would be point and click. You'll have a laser pointer from your controller and you select things with that. Then you have the touchpad gesture and the reticle. The reticle would represent like a mouse pointer in VR. Then with interaction, you have touching, grabbing, throwing. Because you have an entire world around you, you can pick objects up, throw them around, interact with them as if they're your menu. Then lastly, we have movement. So you have locomotion, jumping, climbing, which allows you to move in the virtual environment.
Cool. So another term you'll hear a lot about is motion sickness. So what is motion sickness? This is a false perception of self-motion. So this is when your body is seeing something. So it's called a sensory dissonance. Your eyes are seeing something, which is your visual senses, and your body, all of the other senses, are feeling something completely different. So now, when you're moving in VR, this is a big problem. It's one of the biggest problems that they're facing with game development for VR right now, and that's dealing with motion sickness. Some people are more prone to it, others not so much, but it's still a very big thing. So what happens is your eyes see movement, so it's telling your brain, I'm moving forward. But your inner ear is going, no, this guy's not moving. And then there's this dissonance that occurs, and then you actually get motion sick. So there are quite a few things that increase motion sickness. Latency, bright colors, loud noises, and then movement speed, which is very funny because at a stage they thought maybe the movement, if we gradually increase the speed, people would be less prone to motion sickness. And they did that, and what actually happened was people were getting more sick. So when you're doing movement speed in VR, very important thing to remember is to always start at full speed and never increase or decrease the speed, because that actually can make people more prone to motion sickness.
So for locomotion, to move around, one of the techniques they have is teleportation, which lessens motion sickness, but there is still a sense of disorientation.
So teleportation is basically the main mode of locomotion in VR. A lot of people are implementing it. The issue is there's not a lot of things that you can do with teleportation. It doesn't really fit with a lot of games. If you think of something like Super Mario, which like one of the main mechanics of that game is you have to move. A lot of games are like this. Call of Duty, for example, if you can just point and click and teleport somewhere, that's not as immersive. So that's the issue with teleportation. They have a variation or a spin-off on teleportation, where it's not just a point and click, you actually have an object, and then they build that into the game mechanics, where you would point and click, and then when you release, an object will be thrown, and you'll see the area in which the object lands and the area around it, and then decide whether you want to teleport there or not. And this is more immersive if you build it into the game mechanics, for example.
Then you have touchpad walking, which is where you use the touchpad and move your finger forward and to the sides, and that makes you move. Also, when you look around, that's the direction where you move into.
Now, touchback walking is really bad. Don't ever implement it. It's so terrible. So basically, when you look at a controller, you have a touchpad. This is the HTC Vive. The Oculus Rift also has a trackpad. So there's the touchpad. When you press forward on it and you press to the sides, that's how the touchpad walking works. But because you're literally not moving at all, it's actually making you, you're much more prone to motion sickness by using touchpad walking, because it literally, your body is seeing this, but it's feeling that you're standing still.
Another way to walk is walk in place, which you hold on a button and then you swing your arms, which is also less prone to make you motion sickness.
Yes, so this machine here, it's called the Virtuix Omni Platform. So what it basically does is it has trackpads at the bottom. You stand in it, and then you can run in place. So this is actual when you're implementing walk in place with the machine. Now the issue with something like this that they found, they thought they were really smart. They're going to make a nice fancy machine. Gamers don't like to exercise. People need to learn this, okay? So with a game like Call of Duty, something that you don't realize is, or Battlefield, or really any major game, is there's a lot of running around. And you don't notice it because you go, shift, this is how I run, and it's fine. But now you actually have to cover that amount of distance, and it's impossible, right? So if you're running in place with a thing like this, you get so tired that you play 10 minutes and you're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna put this down and go read a book. So with the run in place with the Vive that you do without having a machine like this or something, there are two ways to do this. The Oculus Rift has run in place, so you don't need any libraries or funky things. It tracks your headset, and when your head is moving, when you run in place, the Oculus is like, cool, you're moving forward. The other way is Arm Swinger. That's a free open source library that you can download, put it into Unity, and that's the tracking of your arms. So you don't actually have to move, but when you do this with your arms, it goes cool, moves you forward. And because you're actually moving, you're much less prone to motion sickness. Cool, then believability. So there's this idea that came around that if you want to make a believable VR game, it has to be realistic. Now, they found that this is completely not true, and they're actually completely not related to each other. Because so realism, what that means is accurate and true to the real life. This is what we know to be reality, actual reality. And then believable, internal consistency. So if you look at this image right here in the corner, that's Skyrim. So you look at that image and you think, that's not right, right? If you're in Skyrim, you see a floating mammoth and you're like, no, the game's bugging out. But this game has dragons in it, which we're totally fine with accepting, but as soon as you see a flying mammoth, you go, no. You don't go, okay, mammoths aren't real. You just think, this isn't real. And why is that? That's because the game itself has a set of internal rules. And when you stay consistent and follow those rules, the game will be believable. So it doesn't have to be real. Games which have low poly modeling that don't look real at all, and they follow the internal rules of that game system, will still be more real than a game that has very realistic graphics, but it breaks its own rules. Cool, so I know what you're all thinking. I want one, right? You see it, it's very, very shiny and we like it. But where do you get started with VR systems?
So you get the Google Cardboard, which is for mobile VR. You can buy it between 100 to 150 Rand.
It's a very affordable place to start if you're thinking about starting with VR.
And if you want to be all fancy, you can build it yourself. You also get some nice 3D models, and then you can 3D print it. It makes it more durable.
Okay, then there's this, which is the Google Daydream. This is what Google Cardboard would look like if it went to private school. So it's basically the same thing as the Google Cardboard, but it has this fancy material, and it comes with a little controller, and it's very, very fancy. It basically works the same as Google Cardboard. It has a thing that flips open at the front. You slide your phone in, flip it up, and the only big difference, so it costs between 1,000 to 2,500 because it has a controller. So a normal Google Cardboard, which I have no idea where I put it now. Okay, so yeah, this is a knockoff, but it works the same. So basically, this is what it looks like. Has the two lenses. You slip your phone in here in front, and then it has a button right here. So it just has one interaction. So you can get knockoffs of these that actually don't have buttons. The first Google Cardboard didn't have one. The second version has one. And then you get some of these that do have buttons and some that don't. So ones that don't have buttons, it's usually more used for watching videos in VR or going on like Google Earth and those types of things. But with these that have buttons, you can actually play games. So you'd have gaze, look at something, tap to interact. The Google Daydream, however, comes with a little controller, and I think it has like 2 buttons on it for app and home, and also a tiny little touchpad. So there's a lot more that you can do with it, but it's basically still the same as a cardboard.
Then we get the Oculus Rift, which was released in March 2016. It was the first like proper headset with VR.
Yeah, so it came with an HMD. It was like a big hoo-ha when this was released because it was one of the most immersive systems that they'd built to date in March 2016. So it also has controllers. Those are called Oculus Touch controllers. They have trackpads that you can move forward and back, kind of like a PlayStation. I don't know what that thing's called. Analogs, the analogs in the PlayStation, and 2 buttons, and then also touchpad, and it has tracking, and then the headset itself also has tracking. So it was a big leap in VR tech when it came out.
The HTC Vive is also basically Oculus Rift's competition or big rival, which was released in April 2016. We have one set up here with the light stations and the headset and controllers in the center.
Yeah, so it's basically the same. Yeah, I don't think there's much of a difference. You can see the controllers look a bit different. The base stations also look a bit different. The Oculus Rift has these kind of tubes, look like painted toilet rolls or something, and then the Vive has these, but most of the stuff between them is the same. Where is that controller? Okay, cool. So this is the controller anatomy of the Vive. It's basically, the Oculus works basically the same, except that it has 2 buttons instead of a trigger. So if you look at this, you have 2 buttons here on the side. These are called your grips. So usually when you want to pick something up, you'd have to press both of these and pick the object up. Has a trackpad here for movement, selection, and then the trigger is down here. So you usually point and pull the trigger to point and click. So that's the anatomy of what that looks like. And then our honorable mention, the Leap Motion. This was released in July 2013. This is not a system on its own. So at the top there, it's a tiny little thing. That's a Leap Motion. And the reason why it gets honorable mention is because it tracks gestures, which is pretty cool. The one underneath it is the developer mount. So you put the dev mount on top of the Vive at the front, and then you can actually track your hands in front of you. So what you do with the normal Leap Motion is you put it down, catch your gestures above it when you're sitting down, or you can have the dev mount and then you can develop for Leap and you'll see your hands in front of you. You can actually pick up objects, and this is without data gloves or any of that fancy shit. Just tracks your hands. It also has they released a new library now. It's called Orion, which is actually amazing. You should go check it out, download it, put it on Unity, which is also free. And then you can pick one of these up for around 1,000 Rand. So I say 1,000 because that's what Incredible Connection said they were selling them for. I actually messaged them. They don't have them anymore, but I found a lot of people selling these secondhand. Mostly because they don't actually have, they bought them and they didn't know you actually need a VR system for them. But you can still develop for it on Unity, and it has the most amazing interactions where they can actually like pick up your hands and you can make objects by making gestures and throw them, and it's great. It's pretty cool.
Then we have the HTC Vive Pro, which is an upgraded version of the standard Vive we have here. Bunch of fancy stuff, like you've got headphones built in, you don't have to plug it in.
Yeah, the biggest difference between, so it has all nicer graphics, wider field of view, and blah, blah, blah. None of that matters. The big difference between the Vive Pro and the normal Vive is that this Vive, as you can see, it has a cable attached to it, right? Which is fine, but the problem is when you're turning and playing, you often trip over the cables and fall flat on your face. That didn't happen to me. Shut up, it happened to you. So this one actually doesn't have any cables attached to it. So you can turn and jump and do all of these amazing things, and it still tracks just as accurately, if not even more, than the HTC Vive itself, which is pretty cool. But it also costs, 17, so it's a bit more expensive.
So to get started, you need a game engine like Unity, Unreal. They're both free available. Also, CryEngine, Godot, Stingray is available, but we're not sure if it's freely available. You might have to pay for it.
Yeah, so we haven't actually developed with CryEngine or any of those. I just found that those are other things that people use, but I would suggest rather using Unity or Unreal because they are 2 of the most strongest engines, and they're free. Also, things like Unity has the asset store, Unreal also has its own marketplace, I think it's called, tons of assets, and there's a lot of resources available for developing for Unity and for Unreal, and not as many available for the others. So they are there if you want to try them instead.
Then, like Leandri said, you have the Unity Asset Store and the Marketplace to get the assets for Unity and Unreal. But you also, for modeling, you can 3ds Max works so far the best to work with in VR, but Blender is also available, which is free software to model in, and also Maya, which is Autodesk, but you need lots of cash monies.
So 3ds Max is actually not freely available. If you're a student, you can go download it you can go download a student license for it. It's pretty much the same as the full version, no big differences. But otherwise, would suggest using Blender or Maya instead. So assets basically includes things like your models, your sound, your music, animations, and all of those things. If you want to model your own things, that's great for using those. I'm assuming if you want to do music or sound, you already know what you're going to use to do that. And then you can also, there's a lot of free Git repos that have assets on them if you don't find something on the stores. And these also come usually with pre-built scenes, so they have a lot of objects and music and stuff already in them that you can use. So if you want to start, you're also going to need a VR or AR system. So usually you'd start with something like a cardboard or a fancy version of a cardboard, private school cardboard. If you're, rolling, you can try and buy an Oculus Rift and an HTC Vive. So those are basically the 3 things you need. 2 of those you can find for free. And the only thing you're not going to get away for free is unless you steal someone's cardboard. Don't do that, though. But cardboard is a good place to start. Because it teaches you the basic interactions. You don't need to have a Vive because the cardboard already is a head-mounted display. It's an HMD, same HMD. There's no difference in the development for those 2. You have a button. You're going to learn how to code for the button, right? It's going to be the exact same thing for the Vive or for the Oculus. The only thing is you're going to assign that code to another button. So it's a great place to start. But if you have money, it's nice coding for a Vive. Cool. Google Cardboard setup for Unity. So you need the engine and the system and the assets. So then you can get started for developing for Google Cardboard. You're going to need the Java JDK and GRE. Then you can download Android Studio. So the reason why you'd want to do that is because you need the JDK and the JRE. And there was something else. The platform, the build tools, all of that. So it's a bunch of stuff that you need. When you download Android Studio, it downloads all those things for you. So just download Android Studio. It's basically an IDE to develop for Android. It's very, very easy.
And it's also available for Mac, but you need to have a Mac laptop, developer license, iPhone, all the expensive stuff,
Yeah, so if you want to develop for Apple, sucks for you. Oh, and you need the Unity Android SDK, which when you start up Unity and you build and run for Android, it will say you don't have the Unity Android SDK, and you can just download it there. GG easy.
So when you want to set up your HTC Vive, you need the Steam VR SDK, which makes it a lot easier. So you have your controllers, your headset, everything already in there, so you don't have to worry about trying to track the controllers or getting the headset. Oculus Rift, you need the Oculus Utilities and Oculus Avatar. There's a very nice plugin called VRTK, which they took a bunch of freely available plugins and they mushed everything together. So you have teleportation, walk in place, grabbing, picking up different objects already in there, and you just assign the different controllers and buttons to it.
So the Steam VR SDK for the HTC Vive setup in Unity, you can download Steam VR SDK from the GitHub, you can get it from the asset store in Unity, you can get it from the marketplace for Unreal Engine. The Oculus Rift setup, Oculus Utilities, literally type in Google, Oculus Utilities. It brings the thing up, you just say, cool, download it, I'm going to extract it, and then you have it imported into Unity or into Unreal and you can use it. Oculus Avatar is actually the Vive. When you set up Steam VR, you can already see your controllers. Oculus doesn't do this. For some other reason, they don't show you your controllers, so the only reason you need Oculus Avatar is for when you actually want to model hands or anything like that. When you want to see your controllers, you're going to need that. And then VRTK, which is amazing, which we're going to show you now. I'm going to show you how to set up VRTK. Just give me a sec. So the reason you'd use something like VRTK, it's a great place to start. So if you've downloaded Unity, you're already ready to get started. The reason why we use something like VRTK is because it has an SDK manager. It's a great place to start when you're starting to code, because you'll realize that when you start to do something simple like picking up an object, it's going to take you about 3 hours to code. When you use VRTK, you click and drag 2 scripts, and it already has all of the basic interactions built. So you only have to worry about building your custom interactions. Don't reinvent the wheel. The other nice thing about VRTK, because it has an SDK manager, you're not developing for Vive and then rewriting your game for Oculus, which is something you would have to do. You can use the SDK manager, you set up both SDKs, and when you deploy, Unity and VRTK go, cool, make a deployment for Steam VR to use for HTC Vive, and make another one for the Oculus Rift. So you write your code once, VRTK handles your deployment. Cool. So when you open Unity for the first time, it's going to open, you just make a new project in 3D, and this is basically what you're going to see. So this over here, this is called your scene. This is what your game world's basically going to look like. This is your hierarchy to the right of it. That has all of your game objects in it. Here's where you assign your scripts and change variables. And then here's everything that's in your project folder. So getting started with your setup. Okay, first, if you go here to the top, you'll see scene. And then, I don't know if you guys can see where my mouse pointer is. Up there is your game, which is basically what you'll see through the camera. And then the asset store is right over here. So if you go onto the asset store, you need 2 things to get started. The first is Steam VR. So I've already imported them because it takes quite a while and it's kind of big to download. All you're going to do is you're going to search for Steam VR. And then you'll see there's the Steam VR plugin. And then you just tap download or import. If you haven't downloaded it, just download it and then import it into the project. And the other thing you're going to need is VRTK, which is there, Virtual Reality Toolkit. Cool. So you just download 2 libraries, super easy. And then let's show you how to develop for this. Let's take. Thanks. There's a lot of shit here. Okay, cool. So the first thing you want to do is you just want to delete your main camera. So by the way, this is being recorded and it's going to be put up with the slides and everything if you actually want to go through it again. So you're just going to delete your main camera because you're not going to need it because you're going to use Steam VR or Oculus's camera. So the first thing you want to do is you want to set up an SDK manager, which basically it manages your SDK setups, whether that's Steam or Oculus, or there's one for the Google Daydream as well. So just go to game object and create a new empty game object, or you can do it here, create empty, cool, and we're just going to call this VRTK SDK manager. Cool. Now you want to add a component. I've lost my mouse. There you are. Cool. Just want to add a component here called the VRTK SDK manager. Cool. So what this is going to do, it's going to manage all of your SDKs. You'll actually see because we don't have any here yet. But we'll add them now. Then what you want to do is you want to create a child object for that. And you're going to call this your Steam VR SDK. And add a component. This is a SDK setup. Cool. And just select here that it's for Steam VR. Right? Then if you go into your assets here, into Steam VR, into prefabs, you just want to grab the camera and Steam VR, and throw them onto the SDK. Cool. Set up, and then on your SDK manager, just hit auto populate and you'll see there's the Steam VR SDK. That's it. Now you can make Vive games. That's how easy setup is. If you want to link up your controllers, you're just going to make 2 objects for your controller scripts. So you'd have one for your left controller. Create another empty game object for your right controller. No, that's in the wrong place. There we go. Cool, so now you just have 2 empty game objects. And you're going to add the VRTK controller scripts, controller events. There it is. VRTK controller events. What this basically does, it captures events from your controller by the button presses. So you'll see here the pointer toggle is set to touchpad press, the grab is the grip, and the UI click is the trigger, all of that, and you can just change those there. And then you want to go to your SDK manager and you want to tell it where your scripts are. So you'll see here it says script aliases for the left controller and the right controller, and you just click and drag those there. And now your controllers are set up. Easy, right? Am I real? Can you guys see me? It's very quiet. Okay. Then if, for example, you want to add a pointer or anything on your controllers without actually writing the scripts for this, so these controller events, they send out, what's it called? They send out events, and then you can write scripts to capture those events. If you want to do things like change player health or anything in your game, you can just capture those. It's super easy. If you want to set up something like a pointer, instead of coding this yourself, you just go VRTK pointer, there, VRTK pointer, and then you'd add another one for your pointer renderer, which just a straight pointer renderer, which just is the renderer so that you can actually see it in game. Now I need to switch back because I actually built this and it's on here. Everyone put their names into his computer, right? When you came in. Cool, cool, cool.
I'm a bad person. I apologize.
One job guy.
Monica LaRue.
Monica LaRue. Want to come try out our Vive? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to help set up. So the only thing I added here was a game object. So there's not a lot here. We're going to have, we have a bunch of VR games downloaded so you guys can actually play, but we don't have enough time to show everyone, which is why we have our random generator. Cool. Just set this to game. Cool. So you can just turn around and walk a bit if you like. So there's not a lot here, but now you can go download assets, build worlds. That's basically what she's saying. It's cool, right? Yay, VR, it's amazing. We love it. I'm just saying, it's 5 minutes to set up. 5 minutes, guys. Then you download models, you throw them in there. You don't even have to. You get scenes that are pre-built for you, and you're set up. 5 minutes. That's amazing. Cool. Okay. Oh, yes. I have something amazing. Did you take the names out after you select them? I don't trust your code. Okay, so I have a cardboard here. If I can just find my phone. HB, check my bag. So I'm going to actually show you guys cool games on the Google Cardboard. I'm just going to send these around. Thanks. Don't be scared. Cool, that's a trigger. All right. So this is the lab. SteamVR built this game to actually show all of the basic interactions that you can do with the HTC Vive. So it's not a very intense, it's not a real like actual game. It's more to show all of the nice things that you can do, like teleport. So you need to wait for them to be green before you can teleport there. If it's red, you won't be able to teleport there. Cool, I have a VR headset for the Wynand. So pull it down till it's green. Yes, let go. Cool. Yay. So I think the pickup is the grips on the side. So there are 2 buttons. I don't think so. There we go. Yeah. Pull it towards your face. Eat it. Can I get another name, please?
Dan Malengo.
Yeah. Dan? Jaws. Oh, yeah. It's a secret. This is a virtual reality headset. So it has a clasp in front that you just pull forward, and you just slip your phone right in there. You can go download any VR games like the ones we're running on the cardboards. Slip it in front, and then you have a nice, cool little VR headset. So those ones, I'm not sure if they have buttons, but what's really nice for those is Google Earth. Damn it, I should have downloaded Google Earth. That's actually great for the headsets that don't have controllers with them. It's very nice. Okay, cool. Would you? Yes, please. Yes, come try our Vive. It's fun. No, it's pretty far. We'll stop you. Okay, stop. No, that's too far. So it's like you have teleport, so you just... Whoa, stop. Yes, so you can walk a little bit, 1 step to each side, but it's best to use teleport so that you don't walk into a wall. Cool, HB, can I get another name, please? True. Cool. Here you go. Cool. Janeen, would you please plug the VGA just for a second so I can see the screen and put on another game?
Okay, and while they get set up, the next name on the list is
Do it.
Craig Scriver.
I have another VR headset. You're welcome. Janeen Sitneri. I'm just saying because they have these things that go around your arm because when you get a fright or something, you tend to throw. That way you don't, break a 15,000 rand controller. I'm not a part of your system. Don't. It's menu, I think, to go to the next one. Or touchpad, I'm not sure. Just press all the buttons, it's fine. Press all of them. Cool. Janeen, will you help? Aim. Aim like you would aim with an actual bow. Pull your arm back. There you go. Just tilt it a bit. There we go. Cool. HB, can I have another name, please? A for effort. HB. A for effort. Still the whitest person I know. There you go. Okay, cool. Next name to play on the VR, on the Vive. Developers, that was hilarious. Does anyone have a question? Cool. Cool, is this thing on? Thanks.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, the quality of your phone, how much does it affect the quality and the interaction that you actually have with VR?
Yes, so there's actually minimum system requirements to play games on your phone with like the Google Cardboard and things like that. It needs, well, let's put it this way. The computer that you need to play VR games on, it needs a pretty expensive graphics card. I think the computer might actually cost you more than the Vive costs you. For the phones, it's not as bad, but you still need a pretty decent phone to run it. You're not going to be able to run it on a Nokia.
Any other questions?
More. I have all of this knowledge. Come at me, bro.
Sorry, with regards to using like a whole bodysuit, have you had any experience using like a full-on bodysuit rather than just having the controllers?
No, I haven't played with a full body suit. We have played with the data gloves. So the body suits now, it's kind of weird. They're very, I don't know. They're very weird because they're trying to like get your, how can you put it? They're more for sensors to make you, to, what is the word? Haptic feedback, right? Yes. But I don't understand why you would ever use something like that, right? When you have these. So you can have data gloves for hand tracking, if that's something that you want, right? You get libraries that can track your legs and your feet. VRTK does player movement, so it takes where your headset's at, builds colliders for you so that you can climb and collide with objects. So I don't understand why you would ever actually use one unless you're specifically using it for haptic feedback.
But now, with the haptic feedback, doesn't it help with motion sickness, maybe?
No, I don't think so. So the haptic feedback's more for the thing with VR, right? Is that they're objects, and you're seeing those objects are there, right? But when you have a specific way that you expect an object to react, so if there's a glass of water and you push on it, you expect it to fall over, right? Now with things like walls, it's really hard to stop someone from walking through a wall in VR because they can just keep on walking or put their hands through walls and things like that. So haptics is basically, okay, well, haptics actually includes sound and visual feedback as well, but haptics in VR is used mostly to, for controller vibrations on those and on the data gloves and that kind of haptics. That's more used to give the player feedback so that they know what's happening. That's what they use haptics for. So when you hit something with a hammer, for example, you'll have haptic feedback so that you know there's a reaction to it. When you put the controller against or try to put it through a wall, for example, it will have haptic feedback to show that there's resistance so that you don't attempt to do it. But also it just feels more real if you interact with something and there's haptic feedback, then it feels more real.
Thanks.
The next name on the list, you can decide what they do, is Sanya Raja.
Oh, this one's a nice one. It's an R2D2 one. You're welcome. Cool. And next name for playing with the Vive, please.
Brian Little.
Sy het om oor beginne. Of soos na die.
Any other questions, comments, complaints?
I don't want to hear it.
My presentation was flawless. Does anyone have any questions about getting started with VR game development?
Like you've used like a virtual reality. Is there any way to use actual like real reality, like video, like 3D video, for instance?
So you'd use that as an asset. Why would you want to use video? What would you want to use it for?
Let's say for the gamification of exercise.
No, you need to use
Sorry, let's say for the gamification of exercise.
gamification of exercise.
So essentially just having like, let's say a treadmill connected to a VR set. So it's playing back video as you're just exercising.
Yeah, but you just include video as an asset. Yeah, I think if you use video, it would more be for something like, well, I don't know. Usually, for things like video, you instead do something with AR, where you'd have your world with the things that you would, I don't know, record with a video that you'd actually be able to see, and then augment either objects into your real world or augment that video into the virtual reality. Yes?
HB, can I get a name, please?
Nope, that's all of them. Did I not call anybody's name? Except you guys. I mean, I don't care about you guys.
Yeah, you don't count. You don't like gingers, Michael. Why are you here?
Should I restart the thing and get new names?
Okay, let's do... I don't know.
See, and there were no repeats. I went through the entire list. You can trust my code.
I've seen your code. Cool, just reboot it.
Okay. It should be a different order this time. That's not helpful.
What?
The first name is Ryan. Who's playing right now?
Cool, give me another name.
Dan.
Dan. Where is Dan? Have you played or did you get a VR headset? Cool. Then he can play next. Yes, give me one more name.
Simple.
Did you get a VR headset? Cool. Cool. Wait, are you a Star Wars fan?
More
Star Trek, no. No, why would I? Yes, for once we can actually use HB's code for something. Let him have this. Fight me. Fight me. I'll beat you. I'm amazing at VR swords. I only have one VR headset left. No, it's not your presentation. Calm down. Do you have my cardboard and my phone? Cool. Cool. So close. So it's very, I don't know if, okay, you guys probably don't watch anime, but there's this anime about VR, and it's called Sword Art Online, where they have a VR headset, and it uses, what is that? It's called BCI, brain-computer interfaces, which, by the way, sounds like science fiction, but it's actually a real thing. So BCI is something that they're actually working on now, where you control your actions in-game using brain signals. So you don't have controllers or anything, you just have an HMD, and you think what you want to do, and then it sounds like science fiction, but it's real.
Yeah, but then if you die in the game, do you die in real life?
Yeah, okay, yeah, bummer. Makes it exciting, but there's actually about this transfer of real world skills, where he is an amazing sword fighter in the game, and then he gets out and he tries to sword fight against his little sister, and she beats the shit out of him. It's great. The other thing is sometimes VR skills, so real skills not really useful in VR, but VR skills are actually very useful, can be useful in real life. So I know we're looking at VR, we're thinking, so VR skills, as we're saying, can translate to the real. Okay, it's fine. I don't wanna. I think I'll wait till the next game. 'Cause that is ridiculous. Try using it as a bow and arrow, shooting it. It's like pulling on it and then. Good try. Okay, guys, this is the last VR headset I have. Can I get a name, please?
The next name is
Okay, Janeen, ek gaan nie afsit.
Byna Kok.
This is the last one. Congratulations.
I'm sorry to the 4 people who did not.
There you go. You're welcome.
Is there like a Mario-like game we can play?
Shut up, Arman. He's asking because for our VR subject, I had to build a game, and I had this great idea. I was going to build Mario in VR, and then I realized that you can't move because it's terrible, and I had to implement walk in place, and I built all the models, and it was just, no, it's a trash fire of a game. Can I see by show of hands who has not had a chance to play with Vive? 1. 2. Jeez. Where's the mic?
Ask them questions about the presentation to see who can get it.
Okay, so I want to find out, do you actually see implementations of this being useful, or where do you actually see VR going? Because right now I see the trend declining because of it being so expensive.
Actually, if you look at the Gartner hype cycle, right, which is the cycle which indicates trends, it usually goes, there's a very big hype, right, where you have early adopters of a trend, and then it reaches its peak right at the top. That's the point at where everyone is very interested in it, everyone's talking about it, it's a very big thing. Then all of the companies are jumping on board. Then the Gartner hype cycle starts to decline, right? And then it kind of catches a dip, where there are only a few companies left who are actually interested in this software or in this trend. And then it slowly starts to pick up again and it stagnates. At which point of stagnation, that's the point at where it's been adopted into the mainstream. So if you look at things like brain computing, they're still very early in the cycle. Things like deep learning, very high up on the cycle. Buzzwords, blockchain, all of those things, top of the cycle. And VR is actually at stagnation already, which means it's already been adopted into mainstream, right? So if you look at things like the Vive, it seems very expensive now. You're looking at, you're going 15 grand, are you crazy, right? But, I mean, 5 years ago, you would have paid 5 times that for that Vive. This Vive was much more expensive 2 months ago before they released the Pro. After they released the Pro, it dropped with almost 5 grand because it's so quickly, right? The technology is actually now at a point where it's people like actually developing for Vive and technology is moving forward. So it seems expensive, but at some other stage, you're going to be able to pick up a Vive for less than 2 grand. Right? And then there will be something else. So it seems expensive, but when you look at what it costs, right, when it was still in the early phases, now it's actually, I want to say affordable, but I don't want to sound like a like a brat. And at some stage, with the development, it's going to get even cheaper, right? Then in terms of VR games, the main place where VR, the people who are actually pushing VR forward are the gamers. That's because if you tell someone, listen, here's a VR headset, you need to pay 15 grand for it, someone will go, yeah, you're crazy, I can use that money for something else. Gamers, on the other hand, they don't use their money for anything except games. That's why they buy expensive chairs, expensive computers. They don't mind paying that amount of money. The developers as well, right, for these games. Gaming is actually pushing VR forward. But in actual applications, except for gaming, where VR is really useful, is when they have things like cave systems or for training, right? They're also using VR for educational systems, right? So, for example, like a really good one is in the mining sector, right? And when they have very expensive equipment, for example, any industry that has very expensive equipment that they work with. Also pilots, right? They had to have their actual equipment. And someone would come and they'd have to train on this very expensive equipment, this person who knows nothing. And if they break it, they'd have to replace it. So what they're doing now, where they're using VR in the industry right now, is they build actual models of this very expensive equipment, or for pilots, right? They build the actual inside of a cockpit. And it's very realistic and follows the actual real life models so closely that they use it for training. So instead of now, someone who needs to train breaking, 250,000 rands worth of equipment, they buy a 15,000 rand Vive and people can actually train on it and use it. So they are using it for training in the industry right now.
One more. what projects are you actually excited about that could come from this?
I don't understand the question. What do you mean?
Okay,
Or
so
VR.
yeah, what projects have you currently seen which drove you to actually learn how to code for VR? What inspired you to actually get going with it?
Oh no, I just like games.
Okay, cool, that's fine.
Who? You haven't played Vive. Okay, well you get to go first because you have, questions. Okay, it's fine. So I'm net oor begin. I you'll be fine. It's VR. It's easy. GG. Spoke too soon. Cool. Do you want to try the lab? Yeah, press down. There you go. The grips on the side of the controllers, I think, I'll pick up. Kan jy onthou mense soos na die ander een toe gaan? Ek weet nie. Dalk iets van sê, so. Yeah, I don't like it either, hey? We were setting up the base stations to see if they actually catch each other, and I had to stop playing because I got fear of heights. It's terrible. Eat it. Which one? Shouldn't just teleport. Ek dink nie is striggle nie, ek dink is grip. Don't push down on the touchpad. You only push down on touchpad if you want to teleport. So stick your hand out and then try the grips. And if nothing happens, you probably can't pick them up. I'm pretty sure there's a game in here somewhere. No, I don't. And I think maybe try putting them in the slingshot, because the game's called Slingshot, but that's just me. I don't know. Oh, there's one already in the slingshot. But it's better because Gaben made it. Okay, cool. Who hasn't played? Please come play.
We have 10 minutes left. So any last pressing questions?
I know I could see you guys' faces during the slideshow going, oh, woman, please. Janeen, loop. Like that. Bezig om te teleport. Oh, cool. You can also just lean forward or just take a step forward. You should be fine. Is anyone here actually interested in buying their own Vive? Anyone? No? Okay. No, can't has.
Okay, so while we're watching him, I don't know, killing people, unfortunately, my colleague who was supposed to bring the shirt, much like this one I'm wearing, got struck by a fever on her way here, so she's not here. You know, we didn't want to infect you guys. So if you contact me on the Rabbiteer Slack, or if you send me an email, hb@retrorabbit.co.za, we can arrange for you to come pick up your shirt either here or at our Braamfontein offices. So, I mean, you guys made the effort, you got here, you deserve your shirts. Unfortunately, we can't deliver tonight. Please let me know, and then join the Slack, join the meetup, join the mailing list, just so you can keep informed about what we're doing, when we're doing it, so that you can keep seeing cool things like the Vive, or like new AI things, or blockchain, or IoT, or...
All the buzzwords.
Yeah.
We have all of them.
Not all of them. We have some of them.
We have most of them.
Okay.
Big data.
I don't think we've done big data.
Of course we have. And cloud. The cloud. We do everything with
yes.
the cloud.
We have done the cloud with IoT, you know, combining buzzwords to make bigger buzzwords. So, thank you for coming. We'll still be around for a bit if you want to ask questions that you're too afraid to ask over the mic. I don't know, I'm looking at you guys. You look very afraid. But thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing what Retro Rabbit is about. Thank you for coming to learn, because the moment you stop learning, like, life's just not worth living. That's just me. But yeah, any last questions for Leandri or Janeen? Any design related questions? Any dev related questions? Any random questions? I'll just go spitballing. Anybody?
Did I want to ask questions, HB? Jeez.
Do you have any questions?
Why are you like this?
My mom didn't hug me enough. Anyway, thank you guys. It's been great having you. There's still some drinks left. There's still some food left. There's still some conversation left. Like, I don't know.
You don't have to talk to him. It's fine.
Yeah, you can talk to these guys or those guys or the three in the back. They also work here, which is why we're discriminating against them. So if you want to know more about us, and Kimi, so you can talk to us, find out a bit more about us, and if that doesn't work, just send us a mail. Like, we'll get back to you within 5 to 7 working days. I have a lot of mails to go through, okay? Yeah. Well, that was the 4th Rabbiteer session. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here.